My name is Lin Zi'ang. I am in my 30s and live in a place with green lights and wine in Harbor City. The city is called the Asia Financial Center, with high-rise buildings one after another. The night view is as beautiful as a movie screen, but the pressure behind it can also make people feel overwhelmed. I was originally a financial analyst at a top investment bank. I dressed up my clothes every day, went in and out of high-end writing buildings, analyzed market data, and reported to customers. Life was still considered as a whole. Although working overtime until midnight is a normal day, at least your income is good and you have hope for life. But who could have thought that financial storms came, like a sudden sea, shattering everything? It was an ordinary Monday morning. I just arrived at the company, had half a cup of coffee, and was preparing for a morning meeting. As a result, the department supervisor called us directly into the meeting room and announced the news. The company wanted to lay off employees, and I was in the list of layoffs. Lin Zi'ang, I'm sorry, this is the decision of the headquarters. The market environment is too poor, and the company must reduce costs. The supervisor's words were cold and he didn't dare to look at me directly. I sat there, my brain was blank, and the pen in my hand fell onto the table, making a crisp sound. Cut out? Just so suddenly? I have been in the position for 5 years and my career has always been good. How could I get to me? I tried to argue a few sentences, but the supervisor just slammed the head and said that this is the meaning of above, and no one can do it. When I packed up my things, my colleagues were all lowered. No one dared to say a word, and there was a strange silence in the air. As I walked out of the company's door, I looked back at the building of the glass curtain wall. The sun shone on it, reflecting a dazzling light. There was a sudden indescribable void in my heart, as if I was kicked out of this world by someone. On the first day of my career, I returned to my rented apartment and sat in the sofa and was in a daze. The bank app on my mobile phone reminds me that my credit card is still 30,000 yuan, and my rent will expire next month. The prices in Harbor City are extremely expensive and I have no income, so my basic life has become a problem. I looked out and started to invest in various key companies, but I heard very little. Under the financial storm, the entire industry is shrinking. Who dares to ask for help? I even tried to contact some old customers and wanted to take on private jobs, but when they heard that I was free, they could even reply to messages. As the days go by, my mood is getting worse and worse. I can't sleep at night and feel unconscious during the day. I occasionally go to the cafe to sit and feel that the service staff looked at me with a little contempt, as if saying, "This guy doesn't work at first glance." I began to wonder if I was really nothing. With 5 years of experience in investment banks, how can it be worthless? After about 2 weeks, I couldn't hold it in and decided to go out and relax. Harbor City has an old town area, not far from the city center, but it looks old and peaceful than those high-rise buildings. The narrow alleys are full of old shops, some selling antiques, some selling old books, and several snacks that smell like oil. I was wandering around without any destination, and my heart was still empty until I passed by an inconspicuous small bookstore. The bookstore's signature is very old, made of wood, with the words "Old Book House" written on it, and the paint is almost gone. There were several boxes of broken books piled up at the door, and when the wind blew, the dust filled the sky. I don't know why, but I walked in by a trader. The light inside was very dark, and the bookshelf was full of yellow old books, and there was a musty smell in the air. The store owner is a thin boss, wearing a pair of thick glasses, sitting behind the cabinet, looking down at the newspaper without even raising his head. I flipped through several books at once, and there was nothing special. I was about to leave and found an old notebook in the corner. It doesn't have a cover like other books, it's just a bunch of yellow papers, struck with a thread of snail, and the edges are worn out. I picked it up and flipped it, and wrote dense words, as well as some charts and numbers, which looked like records of market analysis, but not quite the same. The handwriting is very sloppy, as if someone wrote it under extreme scrupulous circumstances. Just as I was engrossed in my sight, the old man suddenly opened his mouth. "Young man, that book is not sold." His voice was ashamed, with a warning. I was stunned for a moment and asked him why he didn't sell it. The old man glanced at me and said, "This is not an ordinary book. There are things in it that you can't understand and you can't touch them. Put them back." The more he said this, the more curious I became. I tried to get close to him and said that I was a finance person. I was particularly interested in this old data. "Can I adapt it?" The old man sneered, snatched his head and said, "Financial? Humph, you young people only know how to make money, but they don't understand the real market rules. This book is not for you like this." I felt a little unhappy, but I didn't say much, so I could only put the notebook back. But just as I turned around and was about to leave, the old man suddenly called me, "Wait. Have you encountered any trouble recently?" I was stunned, and I didn't expect him to ask this. I hesitated for a while, and still pointed it out, saying that I was just unemployed and had a hard time. The old man was silent for a while, then stood up from behind the cabinet, walked to the shelf, and took down the notebook. He said in a low voice, "It's a slight, or maybe this is a slight. This book is for you, but you have to remember that the things in it cannot be used, and you cannot tell others. If one day you think it brings trouble, take it back and give it to me at any time." I took the notebook and was both excited and confused. This old man is so treacherous that there is something special about this broken book. I thanked him and paid a little. Although he said he didn't want it, I forced him to give him hundreds of blocks, and then went home with my pencil. Back at the apartment, I couldn't wait to open the notebook. This time I read it more carefully and found that the content inside is indeed not simple. The previous pages are like someone's diary, which records some predictions of market movements. They were a few years ago, but they were definitely scary. There are some strange symbols and patterns at the back, such as some kind of password, which is completely incomprehensible. What shocked me the most was that the last page wrote a sentence: "The next storm will break out in Harbor City, and no one can escape." As I looked at this sentence, my heart was filled with joy. Now that Harbor City is at the center of financial storm, can this book really predict the future? I tried to calm down and told myself that this might be a coincidence, or just whose malicious plot was. But deep inside, there was a voice saying, "This may be my chance to turn over." I was hardly sleeping that night and had been working on this notebook. The more I look at it, the more I feel that there is a big secret hidden inside, but I can't figure it out what it is. The next morning, I decided to go and talk to someone to see if I could figure out where this thing came. The first thing I thought of was Chen Xiaoqing, my former colleague, who was also one of the victims of this layoff. Her brain is very spiritual, and she is more harmful to data analysis than me, and she has also relied on people, so I believe she will not be troublesome. I called Xiaoqing and asked her to meet her at a small restaurant at noon. When she came, she was wearing a simple white shirt and her hair was casually slim. She looked a little haggard than before, but her eyes were still so firm. We ordered a few side dishes, ate and chatted, and the topic naturally turned to the unemployment. "Zi'ang, how have you been doing recently? Have you found a new job?" Xiaoqing took a bite of the bun and asked casually. I smiled bitterly and slammed my head, saying, "It's not that easy. I have submitted dozens of suspicions, but I haven't even had a lot of interviews." "Where are you?" She sighed and said, "It's almost the same. I also tried to take on some small project myself, but the customer rolled out the money, and the amount of money he made was not enough for the rent." As we chatted, I finally couldn't help but mention the notebook to her. Of course, I didn't say much details. I just said that I found a strange book in the old bookstore, and there seemed to be a record of market predictions. After hearing this, Yu Qing's eyes lit up and said, "Really? Take it to me and show me the slap." I hesitated for a moment, and took out the notebook from my bag and sent it to her. She flipped through several pages, her eyebrows became tighter and tighter. After passing by, she raised her head and said in a low voice, "Zi'ang, this thing is not simple. Look at these numbers and pictures, the logic is very serious, not as if it was written casually. In this sentence." She pointed to the last page, "The next storm," her face was a bit solemn. "Isn't this a coincidence?" I clicked and said, "I think so too. But I'm very confused now and don't know what to do. What do you think?" Xiaoqing pondered for a while and said, "Why don't we rush to discuss it first, find some information to compare it, and see if these predictions are really that accurate? If it is, then this book may be worth a lot of money and can even help us turn over." Her words made my heart move. Turning over, these two words are so intriguing. But I was also worried that the old bookstore's warning kept coming back in my brain. What are the real problems with this book? Will we get into trouble if we touch it? Just as I was thinking about it, Xiaoqing suddenly felt a low voice and said, "Zi'ang, have you heard the market book? It is said that there is a mysterious book in the financial circle that can predict market movements and help people turn around the world. Many people have found it but haven't found it, and some say that this book is a curse, and it won't be a good start if you touch it." I was stunned and asked her, "Where did you hear it?" She said with great tribute, "I heard from veterans in the company before, and I heard the story. But now I read this notebook, how do I feel a little like it?" I didn't say anything, and I felt like I was disturbed by something. If this is really the market book mentioned in the past, then what I hold in my hand may not be just a book, but a huge opportunity, or a huge trouble. After eating, Xiaoqing and I made a good appointment. Next few days, we will study this notebook together to see if we can dig out some useful things. When we opened, it was already dark, the neon lights of Harbor City were lit up, people came on the streets, and everyone was tired on their faces. I held the notebook tightly in my bag, and felt indescribable, both expecting and afraid. When I got home, I sat at the desk and flipped through the notebook. This time I noticed that some pages inside had small words written on them, like someone's notes, and mentioned a name, Zhang Ruoyong. I remembered that this name seemed to be a legendary figure in the financial circle. He was so popular that he was aware of the financial crisis more than 10 years ago. Later, he suddenly retreated due to a financial crisis in a certain area, and no one heard of him again. Is this book related to him? I decided to check this information tomorrow and I might find the trace. The night outside the window was getting deeper and deeper, and the high floors of Harbor City were flashing with cold light in the darkness. I suddenly felt that this city was like a huge whirlpool, and I was being sucked in a little and could not be wiped out. The next morning, I felt a little heavy in my heart when I slided my eyes. Last night, I turned around and couldn't sleep. My whole heart was filled with the book and Zhang Rui's name. The mornings in Harbor City are as busy as ever, and the sound of the carriage outside the window penetrates the thin windows, making people feel at all uneasy. I washed my face, soaked a cup of instant coffee, then sat at the desk, opened the notebook, and read the small words carefully. Zhang Rui, in 1998, the Harbor City Financial Summit. The words on the corner are very vague, but you can hardly see these keywords. I felt a little moved. In 1998, I was still in elementary school and didn't understand what finance is. But later I heard people talked about it that a large-scale financial crisis occurred in Haigang City that year, and many bigwigs broke through overnight, and some even jumped off the floor. Zhang Ruo's name seems to be a revelation in this crisis, saying that he not only escaped without hesitation, but also made a full pot, and then disappeared. I took out my phone and started searching for his name online. But strangely, there is very little information about him. Only a few old news articles mention some investment cases of his that year, saying that he was a market genius and could accurately predict every wave. There is nothing behind, and even the photos can't be found. The more I searched, the more I felt that I was not in opposition. This person was like a human being. What is the relationship between this book? Just as I was fogging water, my phone was hit, and it was Chen Xiaoqing who called me. She was excited in her voice and said, "Zi'ang, I went home last night and studied the notebook again. I found that the comparison between the movements in it and the market data in recent years is surprisingly high. Do you think this thing is really a market book?" I heard it and said in a low voice, "Xiqing, don't guess." I also checked something and mentioned a person in the notebook, named Zhang Ruo. Have you heard it? She was stunned for a moment and said, "Zhang Rui? It seems to have some impression. Is it the financial tycoon who retreated? I heard that he destroyed several investment funds that year, and then there was no news. Why did you mention him suddenly?" I told her the small words on the corner of the notebook. After hearing this, Xiaoqing was silent for a while, and then said, "This matter is getting more and more interesting. Why don't we try to find this person? If he really has something to do with the notebook, he might help us to unravel the secret." Looking for Zhang Ruo? This idea sounds crazy. If someone who retreated more than 10 years ago knows where he is now, he might have left Harbor City long ago. But Xiaoqing said it makes sense. Now the thread of the notebook is just like this. If we don't dig it up, we may never be able to figure out what it is. I made an appointment with Xiaoqing to meet in the afternoon and discussed how to find someone. After hanging up the phone, I sat back at the desk and stared at the notebook and stared at it. The numbers and charts inside are like a huge net, trapping me a little. I was both curious and scared, and I always felt that this book was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. In the afternoon, Xiaoqing and I met at a small coffee shop in the city center. This place is quite peaceful. By the window, you can see pedestrians on the street rushing past, and everyone is writing pressure on their faces. When the sun came, I was holding an old notebook computer in my hand, saying that I had stayed up late yesterday and sorted out some information. "Zi'ang, look at this." She opened her computer and pointed to an old report on the screen. This was an interview in 2000, and mentioned that Zhang Ruoyan's last public appearance was at a charity dinner, after which no one had seen him. But there was a detailed story here saying that he donated a large sum of money to an institution called the Harbor Fund to help people who broke into the financial crisis to restart their business. I went over and saw that the report was indeed mentioned in the fund, but there was no specific information. I pointed my eyebrows and said, "What's the use of this? It's been 20 years since I was there, and I don't know whether this fund is still there or not." Xiaoqing smiled and said, "Don't worry, I've checked it. The Harbor Fund still exists now. Although it's much smaller, there are ways to contact it on the website. I think we can start from here and maybe we can find someone related to Zhang Ruoyu." I heard it a little surprised, but I didn't expect that Xiaoqing was so efficient. I clicked and said, "Okay, then let's try it. It's better to sit at home and be anxious." In the next few days, Xiaoqing and I began to contact the Harbor Fund. We first sent a mailbox on the official website, saying that we wanted to learn about some historical projects, but we waited for 2 days without replying. Xiaoqing didn't give up, so she found their office phone and called directly. The one who answered the phone was a young girl, and her voice was quite polite, but when she heard what we asked Zhang Ruo, Lima became hesitant and said she didn't know what she knew and asked for a higher level, and then she stopped. This reaction made Xiaoqing and I feel like there were cats. Xiaoqing bit her lip and said, "Zi'ang, this matter is not simple. They must know what to do, but they just don't want to say it. Why don't we go directly to their office to find someone?" I hesitated for a moment, thinking that this method was a bit risky, but there was no other way to go now, so I could only try it with my head. The Harbor Fund office is located in an inconspicuous small building in the old town, and is far away from the old bookstore where I found my notebook. When we arrived there, it was already past 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the building was a little quiet and could not be seen by the security guard. There was only one young girl on duty at the front desk. When she saw us coming in, she showed a slightly alert expression on her face. I cleared my throat and made myself look right, saying, "Hello, we called before and wanted to know about the projects of the Harbor Fund in the early years, especially those related to Mr. Zhang Ruoyan." When the girl heard 3 words, her face changed clearly, but she still said, "Sorry, sir, we cannot provide personal information. If there are any other questions, please leave a message and we will tell the relevant responsible person." Xiaoqing didn't take this trick and said directly, "We are not here to gossip, but some old data needs to be verified and has no impact on your fund. Can you help me contact the people who were responsible for the project that year? We are really in a hurry." The girl was a little hesitant by Xiaoqing. After a while, she said, "That's it. I'll ask you, but there is no guarantee that there will be any results. You can sit in the meeting first." Xiaoqing and I were waiting on the sand beside us, and our hearts were very tight. After about half an hour, the girl came back and said, "Sorry, We are responsible for it. It is not convenient to disclose Mr. Zhang Ruo's affairs. But... She paused for a moment and said in a low voice, he gave me a phone number and said that if you really have something urgent, you can try to contact this person. She passed a small paper with a string of numbers written on it, without a name or other information. Xiaoqing and I looked at each other and felt a little excited. Is this a thread? We thanked the girl and rushed out of the office, and found a small restaurant on the corner to sit down and discuss it. Zi'ang, do you think this number belongs to Zhang Ruo's own? Xiaoqing held the paper with bright eyes. I shook my head and said, it's unlikely. He has been quitting for so many years, so how could he give the number to someone? Maybe he was the assistant of that year. But no matter who it is, we have to try it. I took out my cell phone, took a deep breath, and cleared the number. The phone rang a few times, and someone finally answered. On the other side was the voice of a man. He sounded quite old, and he carried a little sand and said, "Hey, who?" I felt nervous and said, "Hello, my name is Lin Zi'ang. Is it, introduced by the Harbor Fund. Do you want to ask if you know Mr. Zhang Ruo?" The phone was silent for a few seconds, and then the man sneered and said, "Young man, don't listen. Some things will not be good for you if you know them. Let's just hang up." After saying that, he directly snatched the phone. I was stunned, my phone still stuck in my ears, my brain was a little confused. Xiaoqing saw that my expression was wrong and asked, "What's wrong? What's the matter?" I told her what I had just said, and she also raised an eyebrow and said, "This person must know what is, otherwise he would not have reacted so much." I shook my head and said, "It would be useless to call it again. He is very tough and doesn't want to say it much. But this incident made me feel that Zhang Ruo must have something to do with the notebook, otherwise why is he so sensitive?" In the next few days, Xiaoqing and I no longer contacted that number, but changed our thinking and began to study and record the market forecast in our notebooks. We compared the key dates and trends mentioned here with the recent market data and found that the accuracy rate is really high. For example, the notebook mentioned that a stock will plummet one day, but it turned out to be a flash crash that day. The reason is exactly the same as the notebook suggests. This discovery makes us both excited and scared. Xiaoqing bit her pen and said, "Zi'ang, this book is so evil. If it can really predict the future, can we make a fortune on it? It's so difficult now, so we have to live first, right?" I also felt this thought in my heart, but the old bookstore's warning was always on my head. I said in a hesitant way, "It's good to make money, but the road to this thing is unclear. We can't afford it any consequences. Why don't we calm down first and wait until we figure it out?" It was a little clear, but although I was a little unwilling to give up, I didn't respond. We decided to focus on finding Zhang Ruo, and he might be the key to unraveling the secret of the notebook. Just then, I suddenly received a strange call. At the same time, there was a low voice from the other side, saying, "Lin Zi'ang, I know you have something on your hands. If you want to survive, don't touch it. Tomorrow at 3 p.m., I'll tell you the coffee shop at the top of the harbor building." I was stunned. Before I could ask who he was, I just called. My heart was full of pain. How could this person know my name and what I had in my hands? Could it be that the book was discovered? I told Xiaoqing about this, and she felt unconfrontation, saying, "Zi'ang, this matter is getting more and more dissatisfied. Will you go? Otherwise, I will be with you and you will have a look at anything." I thought about it and said, "You must go, otherwise you will never know who the other party is. But don't follow me. If there is any danger, I will just be alone. You can help me continue to check the information at home and stay in touch at any time." Although Xiaoqing was worried, she still agreed. The next day, I wore a casual jacket and a cell phone in my arms, and arrived at the harbor building at the right time. This building is the landmark of the city center, with a high cafe environment on the top floor and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire harbor city. When I walked in, my heart beat a little fast. I looked around and finally saw a middle-aged man in black suit in the corner, wearing ink glasses and a strong aura. I walked over and tried to ask, "Are you the one who called me yesterday?" He raised his head and glanced at me, and signaled me to sit down. His voice was as deep and cold as on the phone, and he said, "Lin Zi'ang, my name is Zhou Tingyan. You can't touch the things in your hands. If you hand them over, I can't do that." I was surprised. I heard this name. Zhou Tingyan is a famous investment bank executive in Haigang City. He has ruthless methods. Everyone in the circle said that he is a despicable person. How could he know about the notebook? Can you tell me that he has something to do with Jean Royo? I calmed down and said, "Silly, Mr. Zhou, I don't quite understand what you are saying. I am just an ordinary unemployed person, so what's the special thing?" He sneered, took off the ink lens, his eyes were as sharp as a knife, and said, "Don't put it with me. I know the notebook in your hand better than you. Listen to me, don't put yourself in. If you hand it over, I'll give you a penny, so that your lower half will be comfortable." I was in a group in my heart, but I was still holding my face hard and said, "Mr. Zhou, you may have misunderstood. I really have nothing special. If nothing else, I will leave first." I got up and wanted to leave, but he suddenly grabbed my wrist, and the force was too strong to move. He said in a low voice, "Lin Zi'ang, don't be ignorant. Some things are a dead end if you know them. Finally, ask you if you want to get married?" I gritted my teeth, opened his hand, and said, "Sorry, I really don't know what you are talking about." After saying that, I walked out without looking back, my heart beating as if it was about to explode. After leaving the harbor building, I immediately called Xiaoqing and told her what had just happened. She panicked after hearing this and said, "Zi'an, this person is too dangerous. Since he can find you, he will be eyeing you a long time ago. We have to be careful and don't mention the notebook to others in advance." I clicked the head, and it seemed like a stone and my heart was pressing. The appearance of Zhou Tingfeng made me realize that the water behind this notebook was deeper than I thought. I even began to wonder, when the old man from Chulao bookstore gave me this book, did I know that this would happen? That night, I got home, flipped through the notebook, and tried to find more traces. Suddenly, I noticed a small piece of paper stuffed in the clip with an address written on it, and there was a sentence, "If there is any danger, come here, Aijan." When I looked at the lines of words, my heart was shocked. Sheet? Is it difficult to say that Zhang Rua? I immediately told Xiaoqing about this, and she also felt that this might be a breakthrough. We decided to go to this address tomorrow and see it. No matter who stayed it, we would have to try it. The night in Harbor City was still so cold, and the lights on the high floor looked like countless eyes, staring at me. I held the paper tightly and felt indescribable in my heart. This game is no longer something I can control, but I know that I must continue, even if there is a bottomless and pure front. The next morning, Xiaoqing and I took the address on the sheet of paper and arrived at an old residential area in the suburbs of Haigang City. This place is completely unrelated to the prosperity of the city center. The streets are so narrow that they can only barely get a car. There are old apartment buildings on both sides, and the walls are almost gone, and the air is still smelling of garbage. I looked at the map on my phone, checked the address, and finally found the building in an inconspicuous alley. The building looks at least 30 years old. The light in the building is dim, the corners of the wall are filled with mud, and there is a smell of mold that cannot be described. Xiaoqing and I looked at each other, and we were all in our hearts, but we still walked upstairs with our heads on our backs. The room number written on the paper is 503. We knocked on the door, but there was no silence inside. I knocked for a few more times, and finally heard the sound of footsteps slowly approaching. The door squeaked and the old man with white hair poked out and looked at us with vigilant eyes. "Who are you looking for?" His voice was a little impatient. I cleared my throat and tried to make myself look less tight, saying, "Hello, we came to find Mr. Zhang. He left this address for us." I lifted the paper and showed it to him, praying in my heart that the old man should not throw the door directly. He glanced at the paper with a slight look, his face changed, he was silent for a few seconds before he said in a low voice, "Come in." After speaking, he opened the door and let us enter the house. The chin in the room is very simple, with an old sand and a broken wooden table. The windows are pulled seriously, and the light is as dark as at night. There is a smell of old in the air, as if no one has swept it for a long time. Xiaoqing and I sat down and looked at him a little restrainedly. The old man didn't say anything, first poured 2 glasses of water and placed them in front of us, then sat opposite each other, put a smoke, and slowly pulled it up. "How did you find this?" He finally opened his mouth, his voice still so low. I hesitated for a moment, and decided to make a decision and briefly mention the notebook. Of course, I didn't say much detail, just that we got this book and then discovered this paper. He heard it, his eyes gradually became more profitable. After a while, he pinched the smoke, sneered and said, "You young people really don't know that the sky is high and the earth is thick. That book is not something you can touch." I felt nervous and asked, "Are you Mr. Zhang Ruowu? Is this book related to you, right? We are not here to cause trouble, we just want to figure out what this is, and some people have already set their sights on us." He heard the words Zhang Ruo and a complicated expression flashed on his face. After a long time, he clicked the head and said, "Yes, I am Zhang Ruo. However, I was no longer the person that year. The thing you have in your hands is called market book, which is a dangerous thing. It was because of it that I almost spent my life in that year." Xiaoqing and I looked at each other, and we were both excited and scared. Finally, I found the main owner, but his words made me even more uneasy. I asked him, "Mr. Zhang, what is this book? Why do some say it can predict the market, and some say it is a curse?" Zhang Rui leaned against the back of the chair, closed his eyes, as if he was recalling something. After a long time, he said, "This book is not an ordinary record. It is a system designed by a group of financial giants. They use it to control the market, create storms, and then make huge profits from it. The predictions in the book are not predictions, but plans. They have arranged everything long ago, and books are just tools for them to execute the plan." I heard my brain buzzing, and Xiaoqing couldn't help but interrupt, "Then were you also one of them that year?" Zhang Ruoyan smiled bitterly, slammed the head and said, "No, I'm just a pawn. I was young that year and thought I could control everything. As a result, they used it and almost killed many people. Later, I woke up and stole the book and tried to destroy it, but their strength was too great, so I could only hide my name and hide the book." I felt like something was hit hard in my heart and asked, "Are the people who are targeting us now the ones from that year? Do they want to get this book back?" Zhang Ruo pointed at the head and said, "It's very likely. The Zhou Tingyang you mentioned is their lackey. They won't let this book fall into the hands of outsiders because once the secret is exposed, their entire system will collapse. Lin Zi'ang, you only have 2 ways now. Give the book to me and I'll help you deal with it, if you want to do something to deal with them yourself, but with your ability, it's almost impossible." I was silent, and my brain was in a mess. Handing over the book means we may lose the opportunity to turn over forever, but if we don't, can we really fight against someone like Zhou Tingfeng? Xiaoqing said in a low voice, "Ziang, if you don't listen to Mr. Zhang, give him the book. We are not players in this game, and it will only be more dangerous if we continue to force it." I gritted my teeth and slammed my head, saying, "Xiqing, this book may be a trap, but it is also our only opportunity. If we give up this, what is our efforts during this period? And, Mr. Zhang, since you could steal this book that year, why didn't you directly destroy it? Are you reluctant to do it?" Zhang Ruo heard me, his eyes flashed with a complicated emotion, and after a while, he said, "You said it right, I can't let it go. Although this book is a devil, it also saved my life. I can't destroy it, I can only hide it. Now that you have got it, you have to make your own decisions. I can only tell you that the secrets in the book are far more than what you see. If you really want to use it, you have to prepare for the price." His words made my heart heavier. When Xiaoqing and I left his house, it was already dark. The night wind in Haigang City made people's face hurt. I held the notebook tightly, and my heart felt like a stone was pressed down. Xiaoqing said in a low voice, "Ziang, what should we do next?" Do we really want to fight Zhou Tingyan? I thought about it and said, don't worry, we have to plan it carefully. Zhang Ruo said it right, this book is a double-blade sword. If you use it well, you can turn us over. If you use it well, you may lose your life. We must first figure out the secrets in the book and see if we can find their weaknesses. In the next few days, Xiaoqing and I almost didn't sleep much, and we studied the notebook day and night. Zhang Rui gave us some tips and told us that some passwords in our books require specific interpretation methods. We tried a little bit and finally uncovered several hidden contents on pages, which recorded some inside stories of financial transactions, and the names of several key characters, including Zhou Tingyan. What shocked me even more was that the book mentioned the ultimate storm that was about to arrive. It was only 3 months later, and the scale was 10 times larger than the current one. If this is true, the harbor city, and even the entire Asian financial market, will be destroyed. And the one behind the scenes is the group of people behind Zhou Tingfeng. After reading these, Xiaoqing turned pale and said, Zi'ang, this matter is too big. If we intervene, we might be really slandered. Otherwise, should we make these information public so that the media can expose them? I hesitated for a moment and said, opening is an option, but the risk is too great. We have no evidence. Who will believe it just by relying on this book? And once it is exposed, Zhou Tingjin will definitely come to us first. We have to think of a more stable way. At this moment, my phone suddenly fell off. It was a strange number. I picked it up and sent Zhou Tingfeng's cold voice to each other. Lin Zi'ang, I'll give you a chance, but you don't cherish it. Now I'll warn you one last time to hand over the book within 3 days, otherwise don't blame me for being rude. I felt nervous, but I still said, Mr. Zhou, I really don't know what you are saying. If you have a certificate, you can call the police at any time and I will cooperate with the investigation. He sneered and said, okay, you have a kind of thing. Let's go and see. After speaking, the phone stopped. I told Xiaoqing about this, and she bit her lip and said, Zi'ang, he is going to take action. We have to think of a way and can't sit and wait. I thought about it and suddenly I had a big idea. I said, Xiqing, it's better for us to take the initiative to attack than if he comes to us. Isn't there any inside story of their deal in the book? We can use these things as codes to force them to stop. Xiaoqing was stunned for a moment and said, are you crazy? What's the difference between this and seeking death? I shook my head and said, not necessarily. We don't fight them directly, but instead make these information into a report and send it to the supervisory agency and several major media outlets, and at the same time tell Zhou Tingjin that if he dares to attack us, these things will be released immediately. No matter how powerful they are, they will not dare to fight against the entire market, right? Xiaoqing heard it, and hesitated for a while, and finally said, okay, let's do it. In the next 2 days, we sorted out the information overnight, extracted all the key information in the notebook, and compiled it into a detailed report. In order to protect our insurance, we also backed up a few servings, and there were different clouds. After doing this, I called Zhou Tingfeng and asked him to meet him. The place to meet is the cafe on the top of Harbor Building. This time I wasn't that tight because I knew that the code in my hand would at least make me stand firm. When he came, he was still in the cold look. He sat down and said, Lin Zi'ang, you really dare to come. What's the matter? I looked into his eyes and said, Mr. Zhou, I know what you want, but I also have what I want. I have a report on my hands, which contains the inside story of all the transactions you have done over the years. If something happens to me, this report will be automatically distributed to the supervisory department and the media. If you are smart, don't force me. His face changed, and there was a flash of murder in his eyes, but it quickly returned to calm and said, do you think you can scare me like this? You're so naive, you're too naive. I smiled and said, I didn't want to scare you, I just wanted to survive. I don't care about your plans, but don't drag me in. Let's take a step back, what's the case? He was silent for a few seconds, and finally snorted coldly, saying, okay, I'll give you this face. But remember, this is not over. If you dare to come, I can let you disappear at any time. After saying that, he got up and left. I looked at his back and finally felt relaxed, but I also knew that this was just a temporary peace. People like Zhou Tingfeng wouldn't let me go like this. Sure enough, within a few days, I received the news that Zhou Tingyang's efforts began to move, and some traps for small investors suddenly appeared in the market, as if they were deliberately creating confusion. I realized that they were reporting this and also trying to find out my bottom line. I did not retreat, and after discussing with Xiaoqing, I decided to anonymously distribute part of the report to an independent media. The media quickly released a survey report, which had caused shocks in the market even though it was not directly named. The supervisory department also began to intervene in the investigation, and Zhou Tingsung had obviously lost a lot. But I know that the battle is never over. In order to protect myself, Xiaoqing and I decided to use the remaining funds in our hands to build a small investment company. We don't seek to get rich, we just want to use fair ways to help those who are injured in financial storms and give them an opportunity to stand up again. A few months later, the ultimate storm came indeed, but because of our early warnings and media exposure, the market's response was much more stable than expected. Although Xiaoqing and I are still small, we already have some fame and many people have started to cooperate with us. That night, I stood in front of the window of the office and looked at the night view of Harbor City, and felt indescribable. This city is still so cold, but at least, I am no longer the unemployed person who was beaten. Xiaoqing walked over, patted my shoulder, and said, "Zi'ang, we have finally survived. Next, there will be even bigger challenges waiting." I smiled, pointed at the head, and said, "Yes, the road is still long. Let's face it together." The lights outside the window seemed to tell me that this game just began.